I believe the owner of Pals down in Tennessee once said, and I can't remember his name, it's going to drive me crazy now, but he once was asked, why invest in our employees? Why train our employees when they might leave? And he said, well, think about it. What if you don't train your employees and they end up staying? I believe that when we invest in our team, we see the effects on the bottom line. We know that today's workforce wants to feel that they are being invested in, wants to feel that they are being valued. And so when we invest in our team in developing out their soft skills, we're letting them know in a tangible way, we value you being here, which means that they might end up staying with you longer. We all know that turnover costs really hit the bottom line in a big way. So if we can retain employees, A, that's saving us money. Secondly, if we can have an entire team that is communicating in a healthy way, that is able to give and receive feedback in a healthy way, and hold each other accountable in a healthy way, we are more apt to reach our goals as a company, which again is going to help our top and bottom line. So I believe that this investment is only going to come back to us in ROI down the road when we can give our employees what they really need, and that's that soft skill development. Are filmed is that I am talking directly to the screen, just like I am right now. On the screen is also the slides where we are going through the information, highlighting as we go. So we're trying to cover a couple different things. We're trying to meet the audio learners because they can hear my voice and listen to what I'm saying. We're trying to meet the video learner or the reading and writing learners because they can read as I go through. And then there's a workbook that accompanies each course. And those are really helpful because if they print them out and actually complete them, there's exercises throughout there to make sure that the information is absorbed. Some companies then like to do a couple different things. One company I'm working with likes to hold a workshop at the end of each course to actually go through the workbook together, to discuss the learnings, to discuss how we can apply it specifically to that industry or that moment in time. So there's a couple different ways that you can ensure that there's retention of the material. When we tested this, we went through a couple different nonprofits to test this. And that was one of our biggest concern is, will we be engaging enough to keep the attention from today's learner? And what we were told was it was engaging enough. They're short enough lessons to where we're not completely seeing glazed over eyes on individuals. They're short enough to keep the attention. The workbook activities allow them to continuously keep their attention and focus on this. And then the quizzes allow the administrator to see that the actual information was retained. So we've gotten some really great feedback. When we launched both of the courses, I had intended the leadership one to be for more mid-level employees. I don't know why, but in my mind, when I was writing the course, that's who I had in my head. When we tested this, we actually sent it out to about a dozen C-suite individuals, wanting to know if they found value in this as well. And what I got back from them was they found huge value. There were some things that were taught in this course they had never even considered, but by and large, it was, oh my gosh, what you touched on, I haven't thought about for years. I have not thought about applying that in my own day-to-day activities. And so whether it's somebody that doesn't have a job and wants to get into the workforce, all the way up to C-suite, the feedback that we have gotten back was that there's huge value in these courses, and that the way that people showed up after watching and participating in these courses was different. It was much more intentional. They seemed to be much more aware of not only themselves, but their awareness as to how they reacted to colleagues and coworkers. That mindset of it's not all about me started to be persuasive throughout the organization for those participants that did the course. Yeah, we tested this with small teams and large teams. So with small teams, how we relate to each other is probably even more impactful. When you have a small team or five or six individuals, or even up to like 20, how we show up every day really impacts the other players on our team. If we're not able to have basic conversations, to voice our frustrations in a healthy way, to manage our time, to manage our own internal thoughts, that's really going to impact the other team members. Likewise, if you're on a big team, if you are able to really start engaging our team in order to build these soft skills, you're going to see this impact the culture on that larger scale. Imagine, if you will, if everybody in your team felt confident and comfortable bringing their best selves to work, holding each other accountable in a really healthy way, and you create a culture of constant feedback, how that would not only feel to come to work every day, but how that would impact the end user, your clients, your guests, to build that bottom line. The effects are the same, regardless of if you're in a small team or a large team. Building up these soft skills is going to mean that you're going to have a more engaged workforce and have lower turnover, higher retention, and better guest service at the end of the day. I love starting with just, I call them my speaking tour. So I go to each stakeholder and I ask everybody, what are their needs? If they don't automatically say soft skill development, or it might sound like, I just wish today's workforce had common sense. I wish everybody, was trained the way I was, or developed the way I was, or had mentors. Then you might suggest, what about if we did some courses that focused on that? Would that help you? Once you get them to say yes, then you have a little bit of buy-in. When you do that to all stakeholders and hear their thoughts on this, hear their concerns, and address them individually, by the time you get to the bigger room and are suggesting this for everybody, you already have people's buy-in. When I started launching Tail in 2015, when in my former position as Chief Human Resource Officer of Dos Toros, this is what I did. I went to every general manager and I said, I have this crazy idea. What do you think if we had this platform where everybody had the same training, where we could see that everybody had gone through the same skills? What do you think of that? Would that work? Would that not work? Each of them had different concerns, and I was able to address in that moment those concerns, or write those down to address at a later point in time. Some of their concerns I could never address. And so what I had to say to them is, yeah, that is a risk that we're willing to take because we find that the end value is so great. When I had those one-on-one conversations and I gave everybody the safe space to push back on me, I found that that is what was needed to get their buy-in. Just that ability, that safe space to push back and say, Aleta, this is my concern. Allow them to believe in what I was telling them, allow them to buy into what I was selling, because I allowed that moment of pushback and address that individually. Yeah, well, I think the soft skills stay pretty stagnant, right? Like once I learned time management, I had that knowledge. What comes next is making sure that I'm applying it. So that's the biggest thing, that healthy accountability, that reminder that, hey, we went through this and it looks like you did a really great job keeping this for a couple months, but now you kind of slid back or backtrack. Let's remind ourselves about these skills that we need to enforce. Let's remind you to get back on to what you intended to. So I think that healthy accountability is what we need to work in. When I was launching some of these back in my own old company, we all agreed that we wanted to have this skill and wanted to bring this skill to work on a daily basis. But again, we're humans. We're going to forget. It's really hard to break patterns. So what we all agreed to was to be able to hold each other accountable. So if I was working with you, Jamie, and we had talked about soft skills and you had gone through the course and we had committed to working on our time management, for example, and then I saw that you weren't really holding yourself to that standard of manage your time really well, I would come to you and I would say, hey, remember those time management skills we went over? You were doing a great job on that, but it seems like you kind of fallen off. How can I support you to get back on, manage your time in a really healthy way? Those reminders is what I think is needed to make sure that everybody's holding each other and themselves accountable. Yeah, so we tested this in all different industries. We have one focus on hospitality where the courses are completely focused on hospitality. That is predominantly my background, and so I was able to use a lot of hospitality examples in those courses. The general industry courses, I kept in mind people in healthcare, in tech, in construction, all of the different entities that I have worked in or with in the last 25 years. I use examples from all of those entities, regardless of what industry you are in. Time management, how to have difficult conversations, how to welcome feedback and give feedback in a constructive way does not change. It's not specific for the industry. These are all skills that can go to any industry and can be applicable from one to the other. One is focused on team members, and this course is going to be focused on more entry level positions, positions where they're not necessarily supervising or overseeing somebody. So the focus, the examples that I use is for the team member role. Our other course is more focused to leaders. So if you're managing one person or managing 150, the examples that I'm going to be using is going to be more focused on those in leadership or management roles. And so those two courses are different. The topics might be somewhat the same, but the examples I use and the focus is going to be different. I think the most common misconception is that either A, it's common sense, and if you don't know it, you're never going to grasp it, or B, this shouldn't be my responsibility as an employer to build out. And I disagree with both of those. I think that a lot of these common sense skills aren't super common. What I feel is common and reasonable might be very, very different from you. And so when we have an entire team that has gone through the same material, then we have a reasonable place to start. We have some language that we can use so everybody understands what we mean by time management skills because we've all gone through the same material. If you don't have some training material to rely on, you are really relying on those individual conversations. And I know HR and L&D is so stretched right now that they probably can't have all of the individual conversations that they want. So this course allows you to train, to educate your entire team so that when you do come back through with those conversations, they have a baseline of knowledge that is the same. I think soft skills are even more important. You know, in an office environment or an environment where you're around your employees all the time, you end up having these touch points that aren't really planned. You end up having those smiles on the way to the water cooler or standing next to each other while you're doing a task and being able to just converse and connect. With remote work, what I found is that today's leader has to be a lot more thoughtful and intentional about connection. They have to be a lot more thoughtful and intentional about the whys, getting super curious as to why things are happening because we can't see. When we're next to somebody, we have a little bit more information from their body language, from the way that they're doing a task to understand the root cause. When we're not working next to somebody, when we're actually remote, we have a lot less information to go on. Again, the human brain tends to like to fill in the missing gaps with what we think it is. There's a lot of assumptions that come from that. So in today's remote workforce, what I'm constantly challenging my coach partners on is to get even more curious, which brings in a lot of those soft skills, having the confidence to bring up a difficult situation, having the vulnerability to say, hey, this is what I'm feeling, or this is what I think it is. Could that be it? Getting curious and knowing that you don't have all the answers. You need this other person to fill in the answers for you in order to get to the root cause to find a solution. I think those are even more important in today's remote workforce. Well, again, if you're going to add a lot of seasonal workers on and you're going to expand your workforce, it just means that we need everybody to play well together, even in a short period of time. So I find that these skills are so important if you want everybody in your team to play well together. How we show up, how we interact with each other, how we're thoughtful as to our body language, our facial expressions, our tone of voice, the words that we choose. Those are all really important, whether we're working together for 6 weeks or we're working together for 6 years. If I'm here for a short period of time, I want to make sure I get the most from this position and I add the most value. And a lot of our seasonal workers don't really think that way. They might be coming in just for a paycheck. Again, when we invest in our workforce, whether it's seasonal or long term, I find that we get so many benefits. We get their loyalty a bit, we get their engagement, which makes it so that they're more productive, and that is only going to help increase our bottom line.